Thank you so much for joining us for our August Driving Success webinar. We have some questions that were submitted prior to the webinar, but please feel free to throw any type of questions that come up during our webinar into the Q&A at the top of your screen. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our webinar. I'm so excited to have guests from Geotab, Xirgo, and Panella. And let Tom from Xirgo just do a quick little of himself and Xirgo.
Great, thanks. My name is Tom Cook. I'm lead our sales organization here, working with the Geotab partner program, and I'm happy to be here to talk a little bit about what's happening in the market with safety and how camera systems bring safety to the fleets.
We do want to have this webinar be more interactive and more of a question and answer instead of, a presentation type of webinar. So we do have some questions that were pre-submitted prior, and we kind of have them categorized into 3 different categories. And the first one is legal and risk concerns with cameras. This is a really big topic because we are dealing with privacy and, we're recording and gathering data from those on the road. So the first question is, how do we ensure camera footage doesn't get used or unfairly in court?
I'll take that one. So really, when you're a customer of Geotabs, you the fleet operator owns the video. You have control over who has access to that video. So if anybody is going to get access to the video clips that are generated in the Geotab environment, it's going to be you that's going to decide how that video is shared outside your own organization. It really comes down to just your own internal policies and managing access to that information.
And so in that same category, how do we measure the true value of a camera system when the incidents are, rare, right? Hopefully. Yep. Doesn't that make it just a kind of an expensive in-case system?
Well, I don't know that I would call it an expensive in-case system. I think there's a lot of benefits that can be derived by adding camera systems into the fleet. Overall, the inherent safety that takes place, driver effectiveness and efficiency, adding video into or camera systems into a fleet gives the fleet operator the ability to see, what's happening in the vehicle, what happened if an incident occurs. But probably more important than anything else is the ability to actually take real incidents and contextualize that. Why was there a G sensor that would sometimes indicate that there was a collision? Well, maybe it was because the truck went over a railroad crossing and the G sensor triggered, and you'll get a contextual view of what happened that caused that event to take place, because you'll capture it in video, in camera. You'll know whether or not it was raining, it was sunny, etc. You'll get a much better perspective, because the ability to see things really adds a dynamic, to what the fleet manager can use as their safety program. And maybe more importantly, one of those things that you can do is have coaching opportunities. Talk to your drivers about how to operate their vehicles safer, maintain following distance that are safer for your fleets. And safety, following distance isn't the same for every company. Different companies have different measuring sticks as to what's allowable versus not, and a lot of that will depend upon, Davis has bigger trucks, and they're probably different than a light duty van or a pickup truck. The mechanical properties of a vehicle differ, and as such, the conditions will change based on that. And I think that the last thing that I would point out is camera systems can truly be a driver's aid too. They can bring in, give the camera visual, bring the visual to what they can't see maybe. When they're backing up, the camera that's mounted on the back could present on a monitor that gives them the ability to back up safely or to change lanes safely when a right turn signal turns on. So the goal of cameras is to bring a more safer environment, and then when the driver is involved in an incident, give that evidence that that shows what actually happened. Statistically speaking, commercial fleet operators are most often not at fault when involved in an incident. It's usually something else that causes the incident, and because they have a placard on the side of their vehicle, companies and individuals oftentimes think that they've got deep pockets and big insurance policies, and we all know that insurance costs are going up because of nuclear verdicts, and it's an opportunity to protect yourself and your drivers, because their reputations are equally as important as the companies. So
Davis, do you have anything to add from someone who has implemented cameras? The argument of this is just a big in case kind of system. You clearly see that there's a value to that. So could you kind of add a little bit?
Yeah, because even like the coaching part of it, if there's an incident, you can see exactly what the driver was doing right beforehand. Was he distracted or not? And so that helps you with coaching. And even the just in case could be a very nuclear verdict against you if you don't have the camera to protect you, because it seems like we're always at fault. We're always the bad guys. When you have the video evidence, there's no, he said, she said against it.
Yeah. I remember when cameras were really starting to take off, and I mean, you see it all the time. People will literally cut a driver off and like back up into them or slam on their brakes, and then they're like, well, you're the one driving the big truck, so hand it over. And they point to the camera, and then the people panic, right? Because they got caught. It's a really, I think it's a great tool to kind of shift the reality of, it's not the driver that is at fault here. And they're not, they're not maliciously running people down on the road or anything like that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I do want to jump into kind of our next section, which is system selection and technology, right? So how do I know which camera system is right for my fleet? There are so many options, and what are the main areas that I should focus on as a consumer?
So I think it really comes down to what is the individual fleet trying to accomplish with a video or a service that's being added in. If you're simply looking at, wanting to look at what's happening in the road in front of you, a very simple road-facing camera, you can learn a tremendous amount of information from a road-facing camera. You're going to find that, the National Highway Safety Administration says that the number one risk factor is speeding. The number two risk factor is happens to be tailgating. And the distance between you and your vehicle in front of you. And you don't need a driver-facing camera to see tailgating. You need a road-facing camera with a guy that's capable of giving you an accurate view of the road and helping you manage the tailgating distance. But the other thing that you can get by having a camera system is you'll see what we call driving behavior. It's not the driver's behavior, it's the driving behavior, meaning, do I change lanes a lot? Am I, zigging and zagging a lot? Do I use a turn signal? Yes or no? How do I behave as a driver if I might be distracted if I'm tailgating and then I have to hit the brakes hard to avoid hitting the vehicle in front of you. You don't necessarily have to see what the driver is doing in order to see how they drive, because what you're going to see is repeated patterns. Drivers develop patterns, you're going to see patterns, etc. You might care though that they're not using their cell phone. In order for that to be the case, you are going to need a camera on the inside of the cab looking at the driver. If you're interested in making sure that when they're changing lanes and moving around, maybe they've got a really big vehicle, and they make tight, their route has them in places that needs to give them more visibility so that they don't hit, obstacles that are near the road, you can add backup cameras or side cameras. It's all about giving the driver and the fleet more visibility to what they can't necessarily see from the seat that they're sitting in, wherever they are. They're depending upon mirrors and other technology to do their jobs. But a camera will give that additional vision that they don't otherwise have.
Okay, awesome. That kind of rolls into our next question of like, do I really need dual facing cameras, or is forward facing enough for safety and compliance? And you kind of highlighted on that a little bit, but what is your recommendation for that?
Well, it comes down to the business's specific needs for monitoring their fleet. If you're a shuttle bus driver and you don't want the driver to be smoking, you're going to want a camera that faces inside that can tell you that your driver is smoking. That might not be allowed. Different companies have different policies and rules regarding the way they expect their vehicles or their fleets to be operated, and that's typically going to dictate whether or not an in-cab camera is going to be required, or side mirrors, or whatever else. You can determine a lot of safety, the operational safety, just simply looking out the front of the road. It is really comes down to what does the fleet need? What are their expectations for the way that those vehicles are operated? And then you can implement measures that can ensure that capability, or ensure that your drivers are performing to those rules or those standards.
Anyone else from our panel have anything to add in regards to, camera need for camera forward facing or dual facing?
The only thing I would add to that is that's part of the consultation and the approach that we take when we're working with a customer, is to understand what are the goals, why are we looking into the camera systems, and what are you trying to accomplish with it, and that helps determine what the appropriate camera or number of cameras may be. So it's part of the conversation that we have as a team that you see here today.
And I think I'd like to just add one more thing. The nice thing with the Xirgo cameras is you have the ability to put in a driver-facing camera or remove it. So if you're having issues, let's say with a driver, and you say, hey, listen, we've talked to you about this. We're going to implement a camera for the next month in your cab. We're going to monitor, and if everything goes well, we'll remove it back out. So it kind of gives you some options and plays as well, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Thank you.
All right. Our next question is, we tried dash cams in the past and had a ton of issues: delayed footage, poor image quality, missed events. What has kind of changed as, the camera industry has accelerated greatly in just even the past couple of years? There's been so many new players. There's been so much new technology that's been introduced. What are the big key things that have changed that would, if someone who has tried cameras before and decided, we never want to do this again, that maybe they should take a look at it again?
Yeah. I mean, AI is improving every day. Artificial intelligence, the accuracy of cameras is in the fleet. The accuracy is improving literally every day, because the more and more that a system has to operate, the smarter it becomes, the better it becomes, the more accurate it becomes. The modeling gets better, and as technology evolves and moves forward, I mean, we can look back to the life of a PC and see how computers have evolved over the course of years. It's really no different in AI technology. I mean, a camera is really nothing more than a video sensor. It's a sensor. It's an image sensor, but it's really what is behind that image sensor from a computer processing perspective. Image or imagery or string of images in the case of video, and measures and detects what's changing over the time. And processor improvements and AI improvements, software improvements, just like your apps in your phone get better and better, and iPhones get better and better, or your Android phones get better and better. That's the same thing with camera technology. It gets better and better and better. Speeds to connections and the softwares that work also improve. The software industry and the telematics industry is in a continuous improvement mode. Geotab has just introduced a whole bunch of AI functionality called ACE in the platform that builds and gets smarter over the course of time, just like AI cameras do.
Anything else to add from our panel?
I concur. I mean, technology is just advancing, especially over the last few years. It's really made leaps and bounds, and now with AI, I mean, every day is getting smarter and smarter. A little bit scary, but it's very cool at the same time. But it's just making it so much easier for humans to take that, review process and simplifies it. So,
yeah. I mean, at Xirgo, every 6 to 8 weeks, we do a new firmware release to the camera systems that we sell, and every 6 to 8 weeks, the AI modeling improves. It improves and it improves. And we do it every 6 to 8 weeks because there are constant changes and evolution. If you drive a Tesla and you use your self-driving capability, you probably know that when that first was introduced to today, it's drastically better than it was in the beginning. Technology world, so.
Great. I do want to jump into some driver trust questions because I think that's one of the biggest things that people are hesitant about, especially cameras, and a lot of drivers think, oh, I'm just being watched. I'm just, it's just another way for me to be managed. So we have a few questions that talk about, driver trust. So on to that point of, how do we avoid destroying trust with our drivers when we're implementing cameras?
James, maybe you could share with us how you dealt with your drivers.
For the most part, most of the drivers nowadays are more acceptable to it. Plane, but actually for it. But we just talk to them and about, let them know we're not sitting there watching them every day. They think the guys that are really against it think we're sitting in our desk all day just watching them. It's like, no, we have so much other work to do. It's only if there's problems it does, record them. And, most of the guys, once they use it for a little bit, they don't even notice it's there anymore. And so we've only had a few drivers really complain about it, but once we talk to them about it and they understand it, it's there to protect them more than anything. Yes, we are going to use it to coach them if they're doing something wrong. If they're not doing anything wrong, we will never, see videos from them. But majority of the drivers, they're very acceptable to. Time driver doesn't, the car is always fault, and this helps protect them right away. And most of the drivers, they understand that. So there is a few that will complain. They don't like it. They think Big Brother's watching them. But we just sit and talk to them and tell them, yes, it's watching them, but it's to protect them. And if you're following the policies and everything else, we'll never see anything. And majority of them are really happy with it.
Good.
All it takes is one to have a good experience and how it would help them, and then it's that good news or that good experience and it makes it even better. So
Yeah, and we did have one early this year where a car ran a red light and hit our truck, and he tried saying, "Well, no, you're no," but it's right to the police officer, and like, no, right away, you see it clear day. Our truck had the green light.
All right.
Perfect example.
Yeah, that is a great example. And it's an example that happened to, real life. It's not just, oh, here's a video from a different company or, that is being used for advertising or whatever.
Right.
It was a real life situation that you experienced firsthand. So that's awesome. What about, so, you said most drivers are accepting of the cameras, which is great. I think there's definitely been a turnover in technology in this industry. We're a little slow. The trucking industry, transportation industry, is a little slow to take on technology, but I think we're finally warming up to it. But what about the drivers that aren't in? I have a question. What about the drivers that try to disconnect the cameras, that don't want to be recorded? Have you really ever had to deal with drivers constantly disconnecting a camera? How do you kind of handle that situation specifically?
Well, like now in GeoTab, it gives you alert if there's a camera is being disconnected, so it helps you track that stuff. When we find them, we talk to the driver about it, and they understand, and then they don't do it anymore. I mean, honestly, when we first put it in, we found tape on the cameras, and our trucks had a small center sun visor in it. They would always put the sun visor down to block the camera. So we just had to talk to them, and it's communication, and talk to them, and just let them know, yes, you're not sitting in your chair all day watching them, watching live video of them. And that's what some of them had in their head, is they think there's this live video playing all the time in the center, but they're actually just sitting there watching them drive all day long. And no, that's not how the system works.
Right. Awesome. Anything else from our panel to add about, disconnecting, or drivers that just aren't in favor of cameras overall?
I don't have anything to add. I have a question for Davis. Just curious, when you were going through the process of adding cameras, drivers into the evaluation process?
Yes, we had some of our longtime drivers involved in the decision making and stuff like that of it. And most of them, I said, they're for it nowadays because they want to protect themselves, so they're for it.
So I imagine that helps get kind of the buy-in for the program if they feel they have a say in the kind of how it goes down.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I don't see any. Let me double check that I didn't miss any questions that have come in during our webinar, but we are pushing up against time, so I don't see any, so we can go ahead and wrap up. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and special thank you to our guests who have taken the time to answer some really amazing questions about cameras. Like I said, this webinar will be recorded, so you will be getting a recording of it after it's done processing. And as always, stay safe, stay compliant, and keep driving success. Thanks, everyone.